Good morning. I call to order the September meeting of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. Before we begin our agenda, most importantly, we're going to start with an oath of office for our newly appointed regent, Tad Johnson, which will be administered by Judge Tracy Smith. Tad and Judge.
Right hand, please. I, Tad M. Johnson,
I, Tad M. Johnson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Regent
the duties of the office of Regent
of the University of Minnesota
of the University of Minnesota
to the best of my judgment and ability,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tad, we have this process here of going around in the horseshoe and shaking hands. Judge Smith, before you leave, thank you for being here to administer the oath.
Thank you. Sir.
You want to take a picture with Tad?
Tad.
Tad?
Regent Johnson.
Regent Johnson.
He's done.
That's all right. One more. That's okay.
Officially welcome, Regent Johnson. Just so everybody understands, our goal for this meeting is to finish under 3 hours. The over and under with the chair, who is absent today, was 3 hours. So he would go over. We will go under now.
Mr. Chair, I move to adjourn.
A little too quick. Okay. We begin our business meeting today with the introduction of a new senior leader. President Gable, would you join me at the podium?
Please. Mr. Chair, I'd like to invite Dr. Mercedes Ramirez-Fernandez to join us up here, please. Morning. Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, friends, I'm so very pleased to introduce Mercedes Ramirez-Fernandez as the new Vice President for Equity and Diversity. With over 20 years in higher education administration, Mercedes encompasses the experience and judgment, excellence, and philosophy to excel in this critical role in the university system. She's adept at building teams and leading and maneuvering through various and complicated aspects of campus climate and diversity issues, all while exuding a kind and collaborative nature. This melding of a strategic vision with the ability to see situations through various lenses makes her a truly unique and exceptional senior leader, and I'm very much looking forward to working with her, as I'm sure all of you are as well. as we continue to take shared steps to achieve our system-wide strategic goals. I could go on, but in the interest of time and sticking to our 3-hour goal, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ramirez-Fernandez to you in her new role as Vice President for Equity and Diversity.
Good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here today and to be back in the Midwest and then to be here in the state of Minnesota. I just wanted to share that my first few days here at the institution have been incredibly affirming and warmly engaging. I look forward, to working with all of you and working with the board and learning from your wisdom towards a more just and amazing University of Minnesota. Thank you very much.
Regent Johnson, he would like to make sure yes.
Okay, throwing her out. Get out of the picture.
Councilman Peterson, do you want Continuing with our agenda, the next item of business before us is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve? So moved. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion to the approval of the minutes? Seeing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion is approved. Next, we'll hear the report from our president, President Gable.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sviggum and members of the board. Good morning, everyone. So at this time of the year, as the students return and you feel the energy on campus, I'm reminded of the words of the university's first president, William Watts Falwell, who uttered on his inauguration day, which I also quoted during my own, "Ours is the hopeful toil of the sower, not the consummate fruition of the harvest." With the fall semester in full swing across the University of Minnesota, Falwell's optimistic sentiment guides us forward, filling us with a sense of hope for a new, fulfilling year of opportunity and success. To this end, our incoming class defines this spirit. It's not only the most diverse in university history, but Minnesotans represent 7 out of every 10 students. And in the Twin Cities alone, we welcomed more than 38,000 applications, a 6% increase over last year, and our anticipated 6,700 plus new freshmen is our second largest cohort in half a century. And from Crookston and Morris, Duluth, Rochester, and the Twin Cities, we extend a special welcome to all of our students. We are so very glad that you're here. So members of the board, since we last met in July, the administration has taken important steps around campus safety, but rather than going into detail in my report, I would defer to the report that's coming up later that is specified on our agenda. You'll hear a comprehensive overview of those efforts and how safety remains our top priority with very good progress to report in this space. Instead, I'd like to talk about how for the 2022-2023 academic year, we have several things going on behalf of our students. First, we increased the floor for all student worker wages to $15 an hour, which is not only an important step for our campuses to be an attractive employer of choice for students who are looking for jobs, but also to reach our Impact 2025 goal to increase campus employment opportunities for all students each year. Members of the board, we also have made a lot of progress around student mental health. Late last month, I attended the PRISM retreat and heard about their current progress and what we can expect over the next year with work around resources for training, research, and other opportunities that's coming along very well, including an exciting new proposal and partnership with the Masonic Institute for the Developing Brain, which has provided matching funds to create a $100,000 faculty research seed grant program so that we can really begin to understand underlying cause. In June, you'll recall we discussed and provided you access to You at UMN, which is a personalized well-being portal now available system-wide. Through strong promotion this summer, we've seen a 174% increase in new registrations for You at UMN. It's like the number I had to quote yesterday. Most importantly, the students are accessing the app at 174% increase. Other important developments include PRISM's partnership with the Center for Educational Innovation. And through that partnership, they've developed a common set of classroom practices to support student mental health and have received PRISM's endorsement of an in-depth module to train faculty and staff of the difficult topic of responding to students who are facing mental health challenges. PRISM's work is transformational and intersectional. It's necessary and impactful, and it's setting the bar nationally, and I look forward to their year 2 work and to sharing updates with you along the way as they progress. In terms of upcoming events, members of the board, since the July meeting, I've participated in a range of important and meaningful events. We welcomed our class of 2026 at Convocation. We hosted Ecolab CEO Christoph Beck for a First Tuesday event. We had the Benson Scholars over for a picnic, and Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan came with Lieutenant Schenk from the Minnesota State Patrol to host a press conference on campus safety. We participated in the Hedge Beck Regents Award. We had the fun opportunity to do this year's Pride and Spirit photo together on campus, on the field, and we had UMF's Executive Committee and board meetings, and last but not least, a farewell for Public Health Dean Emeritus John Finnegan. I've personally engaged in my board service with the Council on Competitiveness, APLU, Greater MSP, the Minnesota Business Partnership, and the Big Ten presidents and chancellors. We just had the pleasure of welcoming our new Vice President for Equity and Diversity, Dr. Mercedes Ramirez Fernandez, and we have an ACE Fellow this year who I would like to introduce, Dr. Carol Hood. Carol, if you could wave to the board and everyone here. Dr. Hood is a Cal State Bernardino professor of physics, and she's the director of the Murillo Family Observatory. She is here as an ACE Fellow and will be with us for the entire year. So you will see Dr. Hood here at every board meeting and in other opportunities to engage. I am also very proud to be an NCAA Pathway Program mentor. My mentee is Kristen Brown from Texas A&M, and she will be here next month at the next board meeting. I've engaged with System Council, the Cabinet, EMPC, Budget 5, and met and had an extended planning session with Minnesota State Chancellor Devendra Malhotra. We've met with all the fall kickoff around shared governance with FCC, P&A. We had the PRISM retreat, fall Senate committee chair orientation. We hosted our second public safety forum on August 24th, which you'll hear more about soon. We went to the state fair, and of course we had the Gopher football home opener against New Mexico State, 38-0, in case anybody was wondering. I also just came from a meeting with the CHS board where we had the opportunity to discuss our new program, Next Gen Ag, and I had the pleasure a few days ago of participating in the process of putting 2 of our student athletes on scholarship, Angelina Hammond for women's basketball and Will Ramberg for men's basketball, both of which were great fun. In February, with regard to university history, the board approved the university's namings and renamings policy, including the 75-year sunset provision for honorary namings, which will acknowledge the historical significance of each naming, as well as the evolving landscape of the university's past and future achievements. Since then, the university's All University Honors Committee established a working group which finalized the committee's naming criteria. We've been communicating all this with the board and widely across campus. This is a new process. We will all learn our way through this process together, and so we are very eager to lean into shared governance and transparent communications. As an important next step, we are reviewing honorary naming starting with the 4 oldest named buildings system-wide: Falwell Hall from 1906, Sanford Hall from 1910, both on the Twin Cities campus, Heal Hall from 1910 as well, and Spooner Hall from 1912 on the Crookston and Morris campuses respectively. Each of these namings meet the 75-year sunset provision, and this grouping of 4 was decided in consultation with the All University Honors Committee so that they could make sure that we had the capacity to address the buildings in the way that we need to, particularly the first time through. I encourage everybody to visit the All University Honors Committee website. They have a lot of information up now about this process, including but not limited to how to submit for an indefinite retention request, how to recommend a replacement or new name, and a variety of other procedural steps associated with this new process. We will take our time to review these submissions and review these well-considered requests, and will confirm with this board the retention of or renaming for these 4 buildings, ideally by the end of this upcoming academic year. So I want to express my sincere appreciation to the All University Honors Committee for agreeing to take the lead in this important work. In addition to this historic work, we have lots of things that make us UMN proud. So I'd like to close my report, as has been a happy practice, with some shout outs. So a shout out to our Office of the Vice President for Research and our Tech Commercialization Office for the record 22 startups and record 241 patents from UMN research this past year, both of which are cornerstone targets in the MPACT 2025 focus area. A shout out to the University of Minnesota Foundation, who we'll be hearing more from later, breaking $453 million in fundraising this past year. They will highlight all of that success shortly. A shout out to history professor Yalile Surreal for receiving the Eggertston Dissertation Prize for her dissertation, Campus Eyes, University Surveillance and the Policing of Black and Latinx Student Activism in the Age of Mass Incarceration from 1960 to 1990. A shout out to the student-led Solar Vehicle Project team for winning the 2022 American Solar Challenge, the first time a university team has won the collegiate competition. A shout out to the University of Minnesota for hitting in the 2022 Shanghai rankings, the top 45 in the world, and with a top 25 ranking in 12 different subjects. A shout out to the law school for its class of 2025, which boasts its highest academic credentials ever and the most diverse class ever in law school history. And keeping with that theme, a shout out to Law School Dean Gary Jenkins, who along with 8 U of M law alumni were honored by Minnesota Lawyer with Diversity and Inclusion Awards. And a shout out to the law school's Kelly Mitchell for receiving the Richard P. Kern Memorial Award for 2022 from the National Association of Sentencing Commissions. And lastly, as has become a happy practice, a video shout out about some other great happenings across the university. concludes my report, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, President Gable. President Gable, at the State Fair, did you able to participate in the cow milking contest?
Not this year,
Not
but
this year.
thankfully I know
Good.
how, thanks to you.
That was previous year.
Thanks to you and thanks to Girl Scouts.
Turning to my customary chair's report, I'll note that September, and this meeting in particular, marks a new beginning for many. First, I'd like to welcome our new and our returning students, faculty, and staff across the university system. Classes are back in session in all 5 campuses, and it feels much more like normal, if we ever will return to normal. I had the opportunity last week to assist new students moving into Pioneer Hall on the Twin City campus. What a great experience it was. The students and their families were full of excitement. You could just sense it in their voices and in their expressions on their faces. Along with my colleagues, Regent Farnsworth, Regent Hips, and Regent Tawarabi, I saw the entirety of the incoming Twin City class at convocation last Thursday. The convocation was awesome, and President Gable, your speech was very, very good. It was excellent. But I will have to say, and I think Regent Tawarabi would agree with me, that it was the second most impressive thing at the convocation. The Minnesota Marching Band, when they came in, took over, did they not, Bo? It was awesome. The campus welcome is second largest and most diverse class ever. And we talk a lot about numbers and diversity in each incoming class. But it is really comes to life when you see the 6,700 new students at Mariucci Arena. The campus is full of activity and excitement. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome again to our new Regent, Tad Johnson. Regent Johnson was sworn in a few minutes ago, was appointed by Governor Tim Walz in July to fill the 8th district seat left vacant by the resignation of Dave McMillan. We are so glad to have you with us, Regent Johnson. Speaking of Dave McMillan, our former colleague joins us today as interim chancellor of the Duluth campus. Regent Emeritus McMillan continues his dedicated service to the university in this critically important leadership role. Dave, we're not only thankful for your 11 years here on the Board of Regents, but also for your continued service to the University of Minnesota. Thank you, Dave. I'll conclude, I need to go back. When speaking of Dave McMillan, now that he's on the other side of the horseshoe, Brian, did you get into our agenda, the agenda item of transferring Glen Sheen Mansion back to, is that, he's on the other side of the table now. I'll conclude with one note about the year ahead. September marks the beginning of a new year for the board too. Over the course of the summer, our committee leaders, the chairs and the vice chairs, were busy with the senior leaders developing an annual work plan, or their annual work plans, that will shape our agendas in the upcoming year. The work plans stem from the board's priorities that we developed with President Gable during our retreat in Red Wing in July. I'm looking forward to the discussions we'll have and the decisions we'll make in the months ahead. It concludes my comments this morning, so let's continue with the agenda. Looking at your agenda, we have the receive and file reports. Please note those items in your docket materials. Moving ahead, the consent report. Is there a motion to approve the consent report?
Move to approve.
Motion has been moved, seconded? Second. It's been a second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Yes, Regent Verhalen first, and then Regent Rocha, I believe.
Chair Swigum, thank you. While I support approval of A and B on the consent agenda, I'll be abstaining from voting on this item, given that my recusal is the subject of item C, for the record.
Okay, duly noted. Duly noted. Okay, Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate Regent Verhaelen's caution. I think you can vote on this but your abundance of caution is respected. I don't think that you have a personal interest in fixing the minutes to show that you recused. But turning quickly to the gifts, we've got a lot of new members of the board. One of the things that I've always been inspired by every month as a member of the board is going through the list of gifts, just the incredible generosity of these folks that make these contributions that are, life-changing and world-changing. I note that there's in the history of the university, there's been such a cultural change. The last regent to have been elected out of Steele County, Owatonna, was Regent Dan Gainey, and he was the founder of Jostens, if people are familiar with the company, and had substantial success. But when he passed, his legacy, his contributions were to St. Thomas. And a lot of people wondered why that was the case, because he was a regent of the university, and his position was that St. Thomas is a private school and the university is a public school, and it's the state's responsibility to support the University of Minnesota. And you can see over what's approaching a century now that clearly individuals have an enormous role in providing support. And just, again, I like to go through, and you'll see some of the same names over the years as you're on this board contributing over and over again. And I just, in summary, thank all of them. I do have a question that I thought was kind of interest, and I don't know if we can get an answer, but on the summary, I noticed that this year we have substantially less in terms of gifts directly to the U of M. So U of M gift receiving last year at this point was, or June anyway, was $812,000, and then whereas this year it was $4,000. And has there been a change in the dynamic? Is there a change in focus? Can somebody address how that changed, that dramatically from last year to this year? And by the way, I would point out that the community has really come forward. The foundation is doing exceptionally well. You can see year over year we're having a very, very good year. And I just wondered if somebody could address that change in direct gifts to the U.
Well, Regent Rocha, thank you for, first of all, pointing this out. Every month I'm amazed when I look at the gifts and the pledges, amazed at the generosity of people. To the question in specific, I'm not going to be able to answer it. So is there anybody in the audience or Executive Director Steves that can try to answer?
Mr. Chair and Regent Rocha, perhaps it's, I know later in the agenda we'll have the report from the foundation, and perhaps we can do a little bit of work between now and then to figure out what is being reflected on that summary sheet, and then we can get an answer for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Mr. Chair, I'm fully supportive of the consent agenda in this report, but if, even if it has to be after the meeting, that's fine. But I'm just kind of curious as to what causes that kind of a shift. Good point. Thank you. Good point. Any further discussion? Any further discussion to the consent report? Seeing none, those in favor of adoption of the consent report, say aye. 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 Those opposed, say no. The motion is approved. We'll next turn on our agenda to the annual report of the Twin Cities Intercollegiate Athletics. This is item 7 on the report. Our thanks to the presenters for their flexibility as they come forward. As you recall, this item was on our agenda in the July meeting, but we had to postpone due to some kind of time constraints at that time. Athletic Director Mark Coyle is joining us by Zoom this morning. I think you're out east someplace, Mr. Coyle?
Yeah, good morning, Vice Chair. I'm here in Connecticut celebrating Lindsay Whalen's enshrinement into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame.
That's pretty awesome. I'm very glad you're there, very appropriate. And we have the Associate Athletic Director and CFO, Tim McCleary, with us, who was here with us yesterday as well. But welcome, Tim. Thanks to both of you for being here. President Gable, would you like to provide any opening tee-em-up comments?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Swingham and members of the board. So first of all, I want to start by expressing sincere thanks to Director Mark Coyle, who has always been a tremendous leader, but has really stewarded the athletic department through an unbelievably challenging set of years with, as you will hear in a moment, tremendous success. As you've heard me say before, athletics serves as the front porch of our institution. That's an expression or a phrase that I learned from a mentor of mine when I was coming up through my own career, who was the athletic director at one of my previous institutions and a mutual friend of Mark's and mine, who really, I think, captures how athletics represents such an important access point for so many people across our state and beyond, to those who come to the games and watch in person, watch online, watch on TV, listen on the radio. And Director Coyle and his team really understand this important responsibility so that we can cheer for the team and be delighted when they win, but we can also be delighted of the way they win, the way in which Gopher Athletics represents the institution, and how they do things the Gopher way. In the last year, Minnesota finished 28th out of 295 universities in the Learfield Directors Cup Division I final standings. It puts them in the top 10% nationally and is considered the most holistic assessment of athletic success on the field, in the classroom, in service, and beyond. Our teams won conference championships. We went to the Frozen Four. We reclaimed Paul Bunyan's axe and so many other things. And we had multiple individual athletes crowned as NCAA champions. We had a recipient of Big Ten Male Athlete of the Year award. The Patty Kazmaier Memorial Award went to one of our athletes, and that's the award given to the nation's top women's hockey player. So a member of the board's winning the Gopher way also means winning in the classroom. We led the Power Five with a graduation rate of 96% and 331 academic all Big Ten nominees. We had 79 Big Ten distinguished scholars and 11 academic All-Americans. So, Mr. Vice Chair, before I turn it back over to Director Coyle to continue the presentation, I want to take a moment to close by thanking our incredible student athletes, coaches, and staff for everything they've done across this challenging and complex set of circumstances over the last few years. They've made really incredible contributions to each other and to the spirit of our campus life, and we're very grateful for that. So with that, I'll turn it back to Director Coyle, Mr. Chair.
Director Coyle, if you would, before you begin, take the opportunity to greet and congratulate Coach Whalen from all of us here at the university. I very, very much appreciate it if you do that. Director Coyle, the floor is yours, and Tim is at the, oh, no signal. Did we lose him?
No, yours just setting it up.
I think it just got disconnected for a second.
Okay. If,
Hey, Vice Chair, it's
There it
Mark,
is.
and as we wait for the PowerPoint to get connected, we had an event last night. We had a University of Minnesota event last night for Lindsay, and all of you would be very proud. Obviously, she represents the state of Minnesota, but our institution in a first-class manner, and the Naismith Hall of Fame is one of the highest recognitions for basketball. For her to be a first-time inductee is wonderful, but it was great to see so many Gopher supporters here and fans here, and it's going to be great to have Minnesota represented on this national stage this weekend here in Connecticut with the enshrinement. So it's a neat experience.
thank you, Mark. You can now go ahead with the presentation, or are we going to turn to Tim?
I can go ahead and start, and you all can see the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, good morning. So first, I want to thank you, Vice Chair Swig, and the board for giving us the opportunity to talk about athletics. As President Gable noted, we are extremely excited and proud of our student athletes, our coaches and staff on the accomplishments that we're achieving. And I hope each of you know as board members how appreciative we are of the support you give us and the alignment you give us to be one of the top academic and athletic programs in the country. We take great pride in doing things the right way and representing not only our institution, but our state in a first-class manner in all that we do. So please know how much we appreciate your support. Also, I do want to take a second. President Gable discussed the changing landscape in college athletics, and there's some seismic changes going on. And we are so grateful for President Gable's leadership. She is very supportive and visible amongst our student athletes and our coaches and our staff. And it's hard to believe. I think she's starting her fourth year, and she's third or fourth in tenure amongst her peers in the Big Ten Conference. And I hope Minnesota understands the strong voice she has nationally as we navigate through conference expansion, through new media deals, et cetera. She positions Minnesota very well in those conversations, and we're very fortunate to have her support in leadership at Minnesota and on a national level. So with that, as all of you know, Gopher Athletics, we sponsor 22 varsity sports. We have more than 650 student athletes. We have 260 plus full-time employees, and our FY23 budget is $125.6 million. Next slide, please. When we talk about our focus on students and we talk about the academic side of it, we have a student athlete cumulative GPA of 3.4 through the spring semester of 2022. So again, our student athletes have a grade point average of 3.4. We remain the highest rated public school in the country with respect to student athlete academic success per the APR report. As President Gable noted, we led the Power Five with a graduation rate of 96%. Of course, the Power Five is our peers in the Big Ten, the SEC, the Pac-12, the ACC, and the Big 12. So we're having great success there. 14 programs earned a perfect APR score in the most recent reporting, and 7 programs have a perfect 1,000 multi-year rate. We had 331 academic all Big Ten nominees and 79 Big Ten distinguished scholars last year. We had 11 academic All-Americans and 25 academic all-district selections. We ranked second in the nation behind Stanford and first in the Big Ten in academic All-Americans in sports that we sponsor at Minnesota. We ranked tied for fourth in the nation and first in the Big Ten in academic all-districts in sports that Minnesota sponsors. And we had 61 academic All-Americans since the 2016-17 academic year. And President Gable noted this on her remarks about campus, but we continue to provide mental health resources to support our student athletes. In fact, our football game tomorrow against Western Illinois is Mental Health Awareness Day, and we have a strong partnership with campus in making sure we bring this to the forefront during these critical times. Next slide, please. When we talk about our focus on our students athletically, as President Gable noted, we finished 28th in the Learfield Directors Cup out of 295 universities. That places us in the top 10% in collegiate athletics. We're ranked 4th among Big Ten schools. We won 4 regular season conference championships last year. We crowned 3 individual NCAA national champions last year. Men's hockey advanced to the Frozen Four. Volleyball advanced to the Elite Eight. And gymnastics competed in the NCAA Teams Championship, finishing 6th overall, our highest finish in program history. Gable Steveson was named the Big Ten Male Athlete of the Year. He is the first Gopher to receive this honor since 2007. And of note, 3 of the last 10 Big Ten Female Athletes of the Year have been Minnesota student athletes. Gable also won the Dan Hodge Trophy, which is presented to the nation's most dominant wrestler. Taylor Heisey won the Patty Kazmaier Memorial Award, which is presented to the nation's top player in women's hockey. And of course, our football team won 9 games. We beat Wisconsin to reclaim Paul Bunyan's axe. We beat West Virginia in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. And of important notes, we have won 9 or more games twice, and that's the first time we've done that in a 3-year span since 1903 and 1905. So we're having great success with our football program. Next slide, please. When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I want to recognize Peyton Owens, who's our Senior Social Athletics Director. Obviously, our community and our country has been through a lot, and we have made this a priority in our department to really focus on improving on our diversity, equity, and inclusion. In our Leadership U Speaker Series, we've had very distinguished lecturers come and speak to our coaches, our student athletes, and our staff. We've had Dr. Michael Goh, Vice President for Equity and Diversity. We had Shelley Carthen Watson, who is the President and CEO of YWCA Minneapolis. We had Dexter Davis, who is Vice President of Human Resources for Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Ecolab. We had Charles Hallman, who's a journalist and reporter for the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder. He spoke to us about Juneteenth and the importance of that. We had Andrea Jenkins, President Council of the Minneapolis government. She spoke with us during Pride Month and also around Juneteenth. We have a Listen campaign for our student athletes, where it's a social media series featuring our student athletes discussing their thoughts about social justice and inclusion in education. We continue to partner with the YWCA for racial justice education. We had a second cohort of staff members go through customized workshops throughout the years. It's about a group of 25 to 30 staff members. I went through it in year 1. We just finished year 2, and we'll continue that program moving forward through our department. The NCAA had a National Inclusion Forum, and they invited Peyton Owens, who's our Athletic Diversity and Inclusion Designee, and myself to address the country and some of the steps that we're taking at Minnesota in our partnership and how we continue to be very intentional in this important space. In addition, I participate in a program called the Minority Coaches Advancement Association, where I conduct interviews with aspiring head coaches of color. I've done this for a few years now, and it's been a great learning experience to meet different coaches throughout the country, and again, trying to improve our area in diversity and inclusion. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we had President Council Andrea Jenkins and Charles Hallman both speak to us, and they provided these comments after they had a chance to interact with our coaches, our student athletes, and our staff. President Council Jenkins mentioned, as alumni and former staff person at the University of Minnesota, I am proud of the efforts of the athletic department's commitment to equity, inclusion, and belonging, as evidenced by their sustained involvement and support of LGBTQIA+ rights. Mr. Hallman said, a commitment to diversity and inclusion can't be and should not be a one-off, but an all-in. Our reporting over the years on the importance of diversity and inclusion at all levels of society, especially in athletics, stressed this as well. Golden Gopher Athletics' commitment to DEI-JB has demonstrated this with its diversity and inclusion 4-year plan, which is both wide-reaching and ambitious in its scope and objectives. Furthermore, if the U of M's overall goal is to be a DI champion, this certainly is a positive first step in achieving this. Next slide, please. Here, as you know, I like to call this the Mark Coyle annual update regarding our finances. And I say this each year because I think it's important as a board and as a president that we all understand all athletic programs have the same revenue streams. And before I turn over to Tim to talk about those revenue streams, I just wanted to break this out for each of you again. If you recall, our revenue buckets are very simple. Our first one is our Big Ten and NCAA distribution. And obviously there's been a lot of news in the media about our new media deal, but it's important to note that media deal does not start for another year, and we won't see any financial impact for 2 years. And once we know what that financial impact is going to be, we have to be mindful of some commitments we've already made for those new revenues that will come into our department, and we can discuss those later in the presentation. Our second revenue bucket is our ticket sales. So when fans buy tickets to go for volleyball, football, the basketball programs, the hockey programs, etc. Our third bucket is fundraising, and that's the Golden Gopher Fund, who works incredibly close with the University of Minnesota Foundation. And we're so grateful for Kathy Schmidlkoffer and Bob Brigette and their leadership and their partnership with our program, and Dusty Clemens, who heads up our Golden Gopher Fund. Our next revenue bucket is our sponsorships, and those are the advertising sales you see in our venues, on our radio shows, on our TV shows, and that's our partner with Learfield Communications and Gopher Sports Properties, where we are told we have one of the top deals in the country. And finally, our last revenue bucket is what we call our miscellaneous bucket, which is our licensing, concessions, and rentals. Next slide, please. Here you can see an updated of the FY23 Big Ten budgets. It's important to point out that we have the 9th budget in the Big Ten, and we also offer the 9th in the number of sports we offer. If you remember earlier in the presentation, I talked about how we finished 4th in the Big Ten in the Director's Cup, which means we are maximizing our resources because, again, our resources have us 9th, but we're finishing 4th. So our coaches and our student athlete staff continue to do a phenomenal job. And you can look at the budgets. Ohio State has the largest budget at $241 million. And again, our budget is $126 million, but that puts us behind Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Nebraska, Rutgers, and Iowa. Our athletic salary budget has been reduced by $2 million in the last 2 years. So again, we are down several positions, and we've been very mindful of our expenses, and we try to navigate our way through the end of the pandemic. And finally, I want to talk about, and I give Sherry Ballard a lot of credit. Sherry is somebody that we worked with and spent a lot of time with. She's now the president of Minnesota United. And she made a comment one time that really stuck with me. And she said that if you're always cutting your way to budget, you have to worry about impacting the soul of your department. And there's no doubt we have made significant cuts inside our department. And we had 15 to 25% budget cuts through our sports and our operating programs. We have staff that is down, I think, over 20 positions. And so we want to be mindful as we continue to move forward and move out of this pandemic that we keep our staff at the forefront of our thoughts, again, to make sure we keep people energized, excited, and allow us to continue to compete at the highest level. With that, I'll turn it over to Tim, who can talk further about our FY22 review and our FY23 budget. Tim?
Tim, if you don't mind, I'd interrupt just for a second. Mark, you also should make mention of the fact that you represent Minnesota at the March Madness Selection Committee. March Madness being probably the top athletic brand going, and you get to represent Minnesota there. I think that's pretty special.
Thank you, sir.
Tim,
All right. Well, thank you, Mark, and
Associate Director McCleary, I'm sorry.
all good, and I apologize for my mistakes on addressing you all yesterday. But thank you, Mark, and thank you, Chair Swigum, and so I'll go ahead and get started. So I will be outlining a review of FY22, our budget for FY23, and then an update on our debt. So starting with FY22, and looking back at how our FY22 budget was developed, it is important to note that the budget was developed and was finalized in June of 2021. So that was a period of significant uncertainty based on the impact of no fans in FY21, the continued pandemic, and the changing landscape of college athletics. Revenue was budgeted $5.5 million lower than pre-pandemic forecast, primarily in ticket sales. On the expense side, operating budgets were reduced by $5.5 million from FY19 and salaries by $2 million from pre-pandemic forecasts. These reductions were offset by increases in other areas, such as game guarantees that were agreed to years in advance, and also a significant contingency for the aforementioned uncertainty. So looking now at the results for FY22, first, we were very fortunate to approximately break even on our FY22 operating budget, and our final report from Deloitte will be released in January as normal. We were fortunate for revenue to exceed budget, primarily driven by strong football ticket sales and with our conference distributions, including the Big Ten Bowl selections. We were very fortunate with Omicron and other variants not impacting the competitions played, both for our Gopher Sports regular seasons and also the Big Ten Bowl games and NCAA men's basketball and the NCAA men's basketball tournament. With this said, we estimate that COVID impacted our bottom line by approximately $3.7 million, mostly in reduced revenue related to COVID protocols and loss of customers in various revenue categories. On the expense side, we had contingency savings due to much lower COVID expenses and minimal expenses related to NIL and the Alston case during FY22. As we will discuss shortly, we are implementing a program in FY23 called Champions for Life, resulting from the Alston case. So, similar programs were implemented at other Power 5 institutions during FY22, with everyone expected to participate in FY23. Otherwise, with expenses, the budget reductions made over the past few years have allowed us in FY22 to withstand the impact of COVID and also the new challenges brought on by inflation. So now turning to FY23, this first slide shows the allocation of our revenue, and the next one will cover expenses. Looking first at conference and NCAA distributions, you can clearly see the impact of our membership in the Big Ten as our largest revenue category. At the conference level, this category is almost entirely tied to media rights for football and to a lesser extent men's basketball. The NCAA distribution is almost entirely tied to the NCAA men's basketball tournament. The next largest category is fundraising, which is comprised of scholarship seating donations, gifts tied to capital project financing, salaries, and key programming such as our student athlete development and leadership programs. We have been very fortunate for the generosity of our donors and for the hard work of the Golden Gopher staff, our coaches, and our other staff that are involved in fundraising during such a difficult time. As an example, athletics raised $13 million out of the $15 million total for Give to the Max Day last year. Closely behind fundraising is ticket sales. We are fortunate for the return of fans and the excitement around our football program, which comprises 66% of ticket sales and scholarship seating donations. Looking at football, men's basketball, and men's hockey combined, those three sports account for 95% of that total. The next largest individual category is sponsorships, and it primarily comes from our multimedia rights partner, Gopher Sports Properties. As Mark noted, we have a fixed annual guarantee, and we are told that it is one of the top in the country. Lastly, with the other category, it is comprised of items such as licensing, concessions, and facility rentals. In a normal year, about $1 million in parking revenue would also be in that category. However, in FY23, it is zero. The process for sharing event parking revenue with the university parking department has always been a 2-year lag. As such, when we had no fans in FY21, that results in no parking revenue in FY23. To close this gap, we are redirecting some one-time revenue from important upgrades and debt repayment. Okay, now looking at our expenses. So salaries and fringe is clearly the highest category, as we are a people-driven enterprise like the university as a whole. While it is the highest category and it continues to grow on its own through the annual merit process, for athletics, it has been reduced by $2 million from pre-COVID, and that's largely from eliminating over 20 positions. While there are some significant high-profile salaries, the vast majority are at the bottom end of the Big Ten, and most staff are lower than campus midpoints, with over 50% of our staff in FY22 below $65,000. The reduced staffing levels and changes in the labor market are certainly being felt in our department, but we are very fortunate to have a very dedicated staff. The next category is operations. This is comprised of sport operations, including travel, and support units such as athletic and medicine, event staffing, and security. These categories were cut by anywhere from 12 to 24% from FY19 through FY22, totaling $5.5 million. The majority of these reductions were continued into FY23, which will be increasingly difficult to maintain with the inflation that we are experiencing. Note that guarantees are down, but it is a temporary reduction that is helpful in balancing our FY23 budget. Next is scholarships. Clearly, it is very important and central to our mission. The cost continues to grow with increases in tuition, room and board, and will continue growing into the future. Pre-COVID, the total was growing close to $1 million per year, and that growth is likely to return. For FY23, included in this category are payments related to the Champions for Life program that we will discuss more shortly. Looking at the other category, as the slide shows, other is mostly made up of facilities and debt. We will cover debt on the next slide, but it should be noted that it is down by $2.4 million in FY23, which is a temporary reduction that is also very helpful in balancing the FY23 budget. Quickly on facilities, facilities include over $4 million in utilities, with the second largest component being custodial and maintenance. So in summary, for FY23, we have put together a plan for a balanced budget that partly relies on one-time revenue and temporary cost reductions. The various categories have ranges and potential outcomes, and there will be pressure on both revenues and expenses. We will be proactively monitoring and managing accordingly. This is my last slide. So this is an update on our debt. So this slide shows historical and projected totals for both total debt and annual debt service. So annual debt service is our annual debt expense within our operating budget. For FY23, over 75% of the total debt balance and 84% of the debt service relates to Huntington Bank Stadium and Athletes Village. You can see that the total debt went up in FY21, resulting from the $21.5 million COVID loan, offsetting the principal that was paid down on other loans during FY21. As noted, the plan is to begin repayment on the COVID loan in FY25 with interest-only payments until then. Total debt went down this past year in FY22, including paying off 2 long-term loans. One loan was for the video boards at 3M and Williams, and also our most recent control room that has since been replaced. And the other loan was for arena upgrades that occurred back in the 1990s. Total debt is projected to go back up from FY23 through FY25, resulting from the replacement of video boards and ice plants that are past their useful life. So talking quickly about the ice plants and the video boards. First of all, we appreciate your support in improving both of those. With the football stadium yesterday, the control room was in February, and then the ice plants were on the capital budget. I believe that was in June. So we certainly recognize that this is the price tags are a tough pill to swallow. We've been, essentially holding off as long as we can with the useful life. What it comes down to is we feel that they're both essential to operating 2 key university assets at a high level, not only for Gopher sports, but also for hundreds of events that are held for both our student body and the community as a whole. If either one of these were to go down, it also would have a significant impact on our revenue. I also want to quickly provide a little bit more context on the video boards within the Big Ten. Some schools have replaced their boards twice in the time frame since our original board went in at Huntington Bank Stadium. We will have the oldest board at the end of the stadium. The other school that installed one in 2009 will be installing one immediately following the season. So again, we felt that we were very mindful in approaching the timeline with this, especially with the lead time of the projects. On the cost side, I also want to highlight that through the research that we've done, we are very much on the low end with this project. So you'll see costs anywhere from $10 to $40 million across the Big Ten with the projects that have been done in recent years. And then lastly, as a reminder, we also had 2 Viking seasons. We had 2 seasons with the United. And we have, like I said, hundreds of other events in a very challenging weather environment with outdoor wear and tear. So I'll get back to the debt. So talking more, so total debt will go back up from FY23 through FY25, as I noted, due to those projects. As mentioned on the previous slide, debt service will be down in FY23, so that helps our budget in this year due to paying off those other 2 loans that I mentioned. It is projected to go up by a net of about $3 million by FY23 once the ice plant and video board projects will be complete and we will begin repayment on those projects. Also note that the debt service for FY23 is included in the FY23 budget on the previous slide. And also looking at projects as a whole, we want to convey that all other recent projects totaling over $10 million have been completed with fundraised dollars. So this includes the softball locker room, volleyball performance center, wrestling practice facility, golf practice facility, 3M at Mariucci weight room, and the recovery room. So as a final note, in summary, over the past year, we have been working through recovering from the impact of COVID, a challenging cost and revenue environment, and a very uncertain environment with significant changes in college athletics. We continue working to create program success, strength, and sustainability into the future. Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. And as I move on to NIL and Champions for Life, I do want to recognize Tim and his staff and all of our staff. As we noted, we've had to make incredibly difficult decisions over the past 2.5 years, and that has not been easy. And Tim and his staff have done a wonderful job. And I also want to recognize Myron Franz and Julie Thomason for their leadership and partnership, working with them on campus. They've been incredibly supportive, and we're grateful for that. And as I turn over to NIL and Champions for Life, again, I want to recognize Doug Peterson, Jeremiah Carter, Julie Manning, and others who have helped us develop our NIL program and our Champions for Life programs. Doug Peterson is an assassin. I mean that in a good way. He's very strategic and helps us work our way through the NIL world. And Doug, I hope you know how much we appreciate your guidance. But as all of you know, on July 21st of last year, student athletes can now profit off their name, image, and likeness. We formed a working group in the fall of 2020 and created an interim NIL policy, which was implemented last July 1st. In the last academic year, we had 130 student athletes from all 22 sports participated in NIL opportunities, and they signed a combined 263 deals. I think it's very important to note that we had every sport we have had at least one student athlete who had an NIL deal that went through our compliance department, was approved by our compliance department as part of those 263 deals that were put in place. Minnesota has partnered with Open Doors for content distribution and Team Ultimus and Anomaly, which is educational opportunities to provide student athletes resources to navigate this important space. We continue to have conversations with individuals who have formed a collective to support Minnesota's student athletes as we move forward. And we sent an email out yesterday to a lot of our season ticket holders and supporters talking about that collective. We plan to have open forums where we can talk to our fans about collectives and the importance of NIL and what it means to be a part of that process. And then starting this fall, Minnesota will provide education-related financial support to our student athletes. There was a landmark 9-0 decision by the U.S. Supreme Court in the NCAA versus Alston case that now allows us to provide up to $5,980 per year of educational-related financial support to our student athletes. We continue to finalize our plans, but this is another step we are taking to enhance the student-athlete experience in providing additional support to our student athletes as we continue to navigate our way through the seismic shifts going on in college athletics. And as Tim mentioned, we call this program our Champions for Life program. So with that, Vice Chair Powell, I'll turn it back to you, and we welcome any questions or comments. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mark and Tim both. Maybe Tim, starting with a question from the chair here. Can you specifically tell me how much debt remains on two projects, Athletes Village and the new outdoor track?
Vice Chair Swigum, yes, I believe I can provide that for you. So Athletes Village, as of the end of FY22, is approximately $75 million on the bonds in the commercial paper, and then the track is about $17 million. And Mark, may want to add those are different numbers than our fundraising goal that we talk about. So, Mark, if you'd like to add on that.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. And Vice Chair Swigum, my understanding is that we still need to continue to raise about $40 million to complete those projects with fundraised dollars.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let me now turn to Regents here for questions of both CFO McCleary and Athletic Director Coyle. First, Regent Farnsworth.
Thank you, Vice Chair Swigum, and thank you to both of you for your presentation. Always appreciate this annual update. I have one question, and perhaps it's just because I missed it, but it's for you, Athletic Director Coyle. I think you had mentioned something briefly about commitments we've already made, being mindful of commitments we've already made for the extra media revenue that's coming in. And if you could just elaborate a little bit on that, I'd be curious. I think it's important for the public to know, and you did a good job of outlining the timeline of this, when we expect to actually see that, because it was a big announcement and big news recently, but I think it's important, that people know we're not going to see that right away. But would love any more clarity you can provide. Otherwise, thank you for the report today.
Okay. Athletic Director Coyle.
Vice Chair Swigum and Regent Farnsworth, thank you for the question. Yes, you're exactly right. Obviously, when the Big Ten made the announcement of the new media partnership that will start at the end of this academic year, we will not see an increase in dollars for 2 years out. The reason being is one of our TV partners, new TV partners, still has a commitment with another conference. So again, those dollars are at least 2 years away. We're still waiting for those final figures. But when I talk about that, money is already obligated. You know, as you all just heard through our presentation, you know, obviously, we have our video board. As Tim mentioned, we're, I believe, the last one, the Big Ten, to replace our video boards. I understand the video boards look nice and they work and those type of things, but we're being told by our internal people and by our outside people that those video boards could go down at any second. So we have to allocate money to put in new boards and enhance that experience for our fans at our events. Number two, we have the ice plants, as all of you know. The Freon system that we use at 3M Marina at Mariucci and Ritter Arena is no longer available to us, and so we have to upgrade the ice plants. That's about a $15 million spend, so it's real money to make that change. We also have, as Tim mentioned, the Champions for Life program. That is the $5,980 that we can now give to students for educational-related awards. So that has more than a $2.5 million impact on our program. And finally, you know, the two other items are simply, we have the COVID loan. I think sometimes people forget that loan is I think just over $21 million, and we need to pay that loan back to campus. We're appreciative of campus support to help us through that 18-month period, but we need to pay that loan back. So those new dollars will be earmarked for that COVID loan. And then finally, we feel at Regent Farnsworth, for us to continue to be competitive, you know, the landscape is changing daily, and student athletes obviously have NIL opportunities. They have the Champions for Life programs. And if some sort of compensation changes for our student athletes as we move forward, we need to have those resources available to help us remain competitive, not only in the Big Ten, but nationally.
Any follow-up, Regent Farnsworth?
No, I'll just say thank you, Athletic Director Coyle, for laying that out. I was clear about, you know, many of those commitments, just wasn't, wanted to make sure I was understanding, you know, what are we connecting to the potential new media revenues, and agree that we need to remain competitive in an ever-changing landscape. So I'm supportive, and thank you for the answer.
Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got to say that this department, from a budget standpoint, has got to be as difficult as you can imagine to try to from year to year manage the budget when you consider the way things shift. And Director Coyle and Director McCleary, you know, it'd be nice to walk into an institution that has 90,000 football seats and a waiting list for season tickets that's about 20 years long, as some institutions have had in the past. And when I look at some of the budgets of the places that have facilities of that size and that kind of demand, you know, their budgets are really substantial. And so I appreciate that you have a challenging job with respect to that. One of the things, you know, and I guess success in that program, if you recall, in the 90s when Northwestern won a Big Ten title, I remember just the reports of the philanthropy and the support, both academically and athletically, that they received. You know, the pride of their alumni base from doing that, and just how you know, kind of finicky or fickle the community can be about providing support in this respect. So I have a great deal of respect for the task that you have in trying to do these things. And I would be open in the future to talk a bit about the COVID penalty, if you will, and how long the department is saddled with that, just because I do think that when you look across your peers, we need to be competitive. And you know, I know we may have some additional revenue coming in from the television prospect, but nonetheless, so does everybody else. And if they're able to invest theirs into competitiveness, and we're just doing it to retire debt, I think that puts us at a pretty substantial disadvantage. So that's a dialogue that I wouldn't mind having as a board in the coming months and years. But the one question I do have is kind of on the same, you know, context and following the previous the consent report stuff, talking about the philanthropy. How is Minnesota among its peers? I mean, is it a more challenging environment? Are we kind of middle of the pack? Are we doing very well when compared to our peers, compared to the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Wisconsins, Nebraskas? What's our environment for being able to get private support from donors to help us maintain a world-class athletic department?
A.D. Coyle.
Vice Chair Swigum and Regent Rocha, thank you for your comments and question. This past year, Regent Rocha, I'll have to get the exact numbers, but our Golden Gopher Fund far exceeded their goal of fundraising. We are very blessed with strong support from the people who support all of our 22 programs and all of our student athletes. And I believe they eclipsed their number by $6 or $7 million this past fiscal year, but we'll have to give you the exact number. I want to make sure I speak correctly on that. But I give President Gable a lot of credit. We've talked and she talked and Tim talked about, we have incredible alignment right now, in my opinion, with our board, with President Gable and her leadership, and with our athletic program. And when she talks about the institution and athletics being the front porch of that institution, we are very, very mindful that our institution does unbelievable things academically. And you heard about the national or the world rankings, the top 45 in the world, et cetera. That is awesome. But people pay attention to athletics. And when you talk about our potential for giving, as Tim mentioned on Give to the Max Day this past year, again, I think the university had a record day of $15 million, and 13 of that was tied to athletics. So when our programs are competing at a high level and they're doing things the right way, there's no doubt you see an uptick in fundraising. But when you ask us to compare ourselves to Ohio States, to Michigans, to Penn States, to Nebraskas, et cetera, they're generating more money, because of the size of or the volume of their fan bases, but also through their scholarship seating programs that people make gifts for football tickets, for basketball tickets, et cetera. So we have room for growth. But again, we'll continue to maximize the resources we do have to make sure we put competitive teams on the field and give our kids and our coaches and our fans a chance to compete at the highest level in the Big Ten Conference.
Thank you.
Regent Hipsch.
Thanks, Chair Swigum. First of all, I just want to thank you, A.D. Coyle, and your whole staff and all of the student athletes for representing Minnesota so well and doing such a great job. I don't think I've ever been more proud of the University of Minnesota athletics than I am right now, so I want to thank you for that. And I do have one quick question. So, as we look at future revenue streams, how do we make it easier for people to see sporting events on television that can't come to games? The #1 volleyball team and the #4 volleyball team were heading off here, Minnesota versus Texas, and it was about impossible to find that on TV unless you're part of the Longhorns network, which none of us are. So I would have loved to see that game, and so would my dad and a whole bunch of other people. So I'm just wondering, how do we get those, turn those into revenue streams for our university and really promote these sports? Thank you.
Any thoughts, A.D. Coyle?
Yeah, Vice Chair Swigum and Regent Hipsch, thank you for the question. First off, I want to point out when we are the visiting team, so for example, the Big Ten owns our media rights. So when the Gophers play at home, the Big Ten has those rights, which means our media partners can show those on our media channels. So in our new Big Ten deal, again, we obviously have our partnership with Fox, with CBS, NBC, NBC Peacock, in the Big Ten and the Big Ten Network, et cetera. So when it's a away game, for example, when our volleyball team plays at Texas, Texas owns those TV rights. So they have the right to distribute that how they want to distribute that. So for home games, we feel very, very fortunate with the platforms we have for our programs to be seen either on TV, on broadcast channels, on cable channels, or through streaming services. However, when we're on the road, we're restricted again because we don't own those broadcast rights. Those are tied back to the home team in their conference. So that's why that volleyball match against Texas is on the Longhorn Network, because it's their game, it's their match, they get to control that. But again, we feel very fortunate, and again, I give President Gable a lot of credit. Her and her colleagues working with Commissioner Warren, when we structured this new TV partnership, they made sure that we had maximum exposure for all 22 programs. And as I said before, President Gable has a strong voice in that room, is a strong advocate for all 22 of our programs to make sure they have the most exposure and coverage as possible for our fans to be able to watch them compete.
Regent Hipsch, follow up?
Thank you.
Regent Howell Robbie.
I'll take that too.
Oh, okay. We can be a little informal at times here.
Exactly. Thank you, Vice Chair Swigum and Director Coyle. I just had a question about ticket pricing. I'm just curious on that revenue side. Are we doing anything that is new or considering sort of other options for ticket pricing, especially in response to, when we're doing well or in sports that are in high demand? I'm curious.
A.D. Coyle.
Yeah, Vice Chair Swigum and Regent Talley-Rabi, thank you for the question. So I have to give a shout out to Travis Cameron, Mike Wiersbicki, Tim McCleary, and others. Every Monday morning, we have a revenue generation meeting, and we spend a lot of time talking about ticket sales and how we can be creative. And I would argue Travis Cameron may be one of the top ticket managers in the country with respect to how we price our events, how we try to get creative and get as many people in as possible to our events. And if, for example, at our last football game, we had a great crowd against New Mexico State. And immediately after that game, we have special pricing options. Get-in prices, I think they're as low as $15 for the Western Illinois game tomorrow that we have at home. So we spend a lot of time looking at our pricing models, looking at the secondary market. And again, Travis Cameron keeps us at the forefront of that. And we continue to see an uptick in ticket sales. As Tim mentioned in our presentation, we saw an uptick in ticket sales. But there's no question winning, and in the state of Minnesota, winning the right way, meaning we do it with great integrity, will continue to help us sell more tickets. But again, we try to be very flexible, very market focused on our ticket sales, and feel like we're doing a wonderful job, and we continue to grow that important revenue stream for us.
Other regions? Regent Johnson, R.
Thank you, Vice Chair Swigum and AD Coyle. Just a quick question, follow-up. I'm sure all of the regents are getting questions from, as I am, from friends, family, and colleagues about this Big Ten $7.5 billion TV rights bill, and we recognize there will be a lag before it kicks in. Can you help us understand or give us a short elevator speech on how this is going to work and how teams will divide up, or how's that when the revenue comes in, so we can understand ourselves and explain it to our friends?
AD Coyle.
Yeah, Vice Chair Swigum and Regent Johnson, thank you for the question. So President Gable, I think, will agree with me that this is a very complex process. But how it works, so we're very fortunate to be a legacy member in the Big Ten Conference at the University of Minnesota. So we're one of the founding members of the Big Ten Conference. And what I love about the Big Ten Conference is that it shares that revenue equally among all members. So as you know, the Big Ten recently added USC and UCLA, so we will have 16 members. So the Big Ten will take that new media revenue. They take a portion of that revenue off the top of it to help manage the office, to help support our championships for all of our programs, et cetera. And then the remaining revenue will be split 16 ways amongst all the conference members equally. So Minnesota gets the same amount of revenue as Ohio State does. Minnesota gets the same amount of revenue as Northwestern does. So the conference does an excellent job of sharing that money equally. And again, President Gable, she's part of a committee called the COPC, which is the Committee of Presidents and Chancellors of the Big Ten. And her colleagues have those conversations to make sure that we keep that revenue distribution equal and fair among the member institutions. But again, when that new deal does kick in, I don't mean to get into the weeds, but again, our deal will end at the end of this academic year. The new media deal starts next fall. The reason why there's a lag in the money is simply that one of our new TV partners still has a partnership with another conference. And so they won't be able to broadcast all of our events. And so again, we don't anticipate seeing an uptick in revenue until the FY25 fiscal year. And of course, we can address the board once we know what that revenue looks like and can share that and how again, that money's obligated towards some of the projects I outlined earlier with Regent Farnworth's question. But I hope that's helpful.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Regent Kenyatta.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. AD Coyle, Associate AD McCleary, thank you for the presentation. Just a couple thoughts and questions. At first, as we're talking about the expansion to 16 teams, I thought at 14, we were just rounding down to 10. But at 16, it just really doesn't make sense anymore to keep the name as it is. Regent, now I just wanted to call her Bo because that's what you got stuck in my head. Regent Talley-Rabi's point about the tickets, I think was a good one. And, I'm sure your staff knows about that a lot better than I do. But, as much as we can fill seats, even at lower revenue, it'd be nice to fill them and find interesting models for that. So I have a question, and then if you'll indulge me, Mr. Chair, just some comments after that. My first one, AD Coyle, is about Champions for Life program. You mentioned Open Doors providing the content distribution as well as I'm not going to pronounce that company, but you know the ones I'm talking about for educational opportunities. Can you talk about what role they're playing exactly in that program?
AD Coyle.
Vice Chair Swigum and Regent Kenyanya, thank you for the question. So Open Doors, when we talk about content distribution, it's more brand management for our student athletes. So when NIL became available to our student athletes, we wanted to make sure, and I give Peyton Owens and our Leadership U credit, a lot of credit for managing this program. We partnered with Open Doors, and they have partnerships with a lot of the programs across the country, but it's simply a way for our student athletes to understand their brand, the impact of their brand, and the impact of that on social media. Because a lot of these NIL deals are tied to social media and putting out tweets or Instagram posts, et cetera, about these different organizations promoting with our student athletes. So Open Doors helps with brand management with our student athletes. And then Team Ultimus helps with financial management. So obviously we have student athletes now that are receiving income for their partnerships, their NIL deals, and Open Doors helps them to educate them with financial management, tax implications, et cetera. So that's why we partnered with those two groups. And it's important to note that we also are having conversations with Carlson and other campus partners to work closely with them as we continue to evolve this NIL program and how that will work moving forward. Does that answer your question, sir?
Follow-up comments?
Yes, it does, actually. Thank you very much. And I like that last point about using the expertise we have here on campus for, Carlson, for example. That's a really creative idea. So, that does answer the question. I just wanted to point out / recognize a couple things. One, that the GPA, they're student athletes, right? Student first, so really proud of all the work happening there. And leading, I think we led Power 5, you said, in graduation rates, which I think is one of the most important metrics. There's no point in bringing students here if we're not going to give them degrees at the end. So really, really good stuff. You're over there recognizing Coach Whalen, and I'd like to say I wore this Lynx shirt under this dress shirt on purpose, but we're really proud of her accomplishments here on campus, obviously, as well as the Target Center, so just wanted to give that shout out. And then on a less lighter note, I do know over the past week, Gopher Nation has been mourning Eric Walker, the track and field standout, who was a recent graduate, and I've been seeing all the tributes coming out for him, so just wanted to take a moment to recognize him as well. Thank you, Director Coyle.
Thank you, CFO McCleary and Director Coyle, for being with us today, for sharing with us. Certainly you have challenges, but you have great performance for our student athletes. Thank you for that. And it's also comforting for us to know, Mark, sitting here, that you always do things the right way. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, here's what we're going to do. President Schmigelkoffer, we're going to ask you to come forward and sit down and get ready. We're going to take a 5-minute recess while you get to the chair and get everything ready. 5 minutes. 5 minutes only. to CEO and President Schmidlkoffer. I believe President Gable would like to tee this up and make a few opening comments. Maybe not. That's okay. Okay, Regent Hipsch?
No,
you
I'm
tee
good.
it up.
That was my
Well,
stall.
he just put something in his mouth.
Thank you, Vice Chair Swigum, members of the board. We'll start, of course, with our expression of appreciation to the foundation and its CEO and president, Kathy Schmidlkoffer, and our entire development community, which touches every corner of the campus, the community, and includes incredible partners and supporters who you will hear from. There's a lot of service and stewardship that goes into the kind of numbers that you see in the reports that we've provided. And I've been really inspired to see how this foundation handles and believes in that stewardship and what it does for the university, all the while navigating through the same unbelievably challenging circumstances that the rest of us have dealt with, but that very much affected the way in which they do business, since it's such a face-to-face personal business, and yet without missing a beat. So it was really quite remarkable. The results speak for themselves. You'll hear the details, but as I described earlier in the shout-outs, this past year, which was our first year post the Historic Driven campaign, and I should say, because it's been a while since we've been post-campaign, that is normally a valley in philanthropy that we would be explaining to you. And instead, we raised a record $453 million, and it's the first time the university's crossed the psychological $400 million threshold, which would not normally be this year, not normally be at this time, and yet here we are. So a lot of the work that went into that came together through the $60 million Hormel Foundation gift to support the farm initiative, which is just a tremendous example of how philanthropy helps us do our core mission of research, teaching, and service, where all three are so exemplified by that project. I think we should also note that the last 3 years represent the highest 3 years of fundraising in university history. And that's a team sport, and I'm personally very grateful, and I know everyone else is too. So that gives us a lot of optimism about the future and to what the next campaign, because it's time to start talking about that, might look like, what its focus will be, what its priorities will be, how Impact 2025 informs that campaign, the foundation strategic plan. In the near term, though, we are focused on raising money to increase student and faculty excellence through initiatives like Learners to Leaders and Innovators and Educators, which I'm sure you will hear described. So at this time, Mr. Vice Chair, with appreciation, I'd like to turn it over to our presenters.
Very, very good. Kathy, successful performance. You're raising the bar.
We're raising the
You
bar,
have to, we keep expecting a high bar.
as you should, for this great institution. Thank you, President Gable. Good morning, Vice Chair Swigum, members of the board. Thank you for allowing us this time to present the University of Minnesota Foundation's annual report on giving. And today, I'm pleased to provide an overview of the foundation. We're going to review our accomplishments from the last fiscal year. We're going to highlight our current fundraising priorities. And most importantly, we're going to share the impact of philanthropy through the lens of innovation and inspiration. At the University of Minnesota Foundation, we have the honor of telling the great story of how the University of Minnesota is making a difference, which means we get a front row seat to the incredible work happening across all 5 campuses. We continue to be amazed and inspired by the talent and commitment that abounds at the university and the way it touches lives. As you all know, private giving can change the course of a student's life. It can fund research that saves lives, and it can broaden perspectives and improve the world. And we, in the development community, know it's a privilege to be part of that. So let's begin by sharing the story of a student who has seen this in her own life. Here's Amira Hassan.
I grew up in Egypt for part of my life, and unfortunately, when my cousin was very sick, I got to see a lot of hospitals there and see how the healthcare system operates there, how medicine can make such a difference in someone's life. And then also coming back here home to the US and falling in love with my science classes that really led the way to medicine for me. Scholarship support makes all the difference. I think that there are so many students out there who have the talent, who have the brains and the heart to be doctors and to be amazing doctors, but they're held back by their circumstances. I never had family who went to college in the US. I had to figure it all out on my own. So having scholarship support really does allow you to have at least one person who believes in you enough to know that you can do it, and it's a huge load off your back. I'm so grateful and thankful, and I'm tearing up a bit, but it means the world that someone could be that generous, and I can't wait to also pay it back when it's my turn.
I think she says it perfectly, and that's why we do what we do. So let's start with a look at the foundation and how the role of private giving helps to make stories like Amira's possible. As many of you know, the University of Minnesota Foundation is a private nonprofit organization governed by a 41-member board with 1/4 of our trustees nominated by the Board of Regents. 2 regents and the president currently serves as trustees. Thank you, Regents Davenport and Hipsch, and President Gable for your valued service and engagement. And thank you, Regent Kenyanya, for your engagement with our audit committee as well. Our vision is a future transformed by philanthropy, and we work together to change lives and support greatness across the university. We collaborate system-wide to support students, faculty, research, and outreach to the community. And this means we raise funds for all 5 of our campuses in Crookston, Duluth, Morris, Rochester, and here in the Twin Cities. We are also honored to work with donors and volunteers statewide, coast to coast, and across the globe. Fiscal 22, well, we are incredibly thrilled to report that in fiscal year 22, we had a record year of fundraising with our highest gift production ever at $453 million. We are proud of these results, as this is the first year post the Driven campaign era. And as President Gable mentioned, among our peer group, this type of increase in fundraising is highly unusual for the first year following a campaign, which demonstrates both the diligence of the development community and university leadership and the momentum that we gained through the Driven campaign. As you can see, that $453 million came from more than 90,000 donors and 163,000 individual gifts. And those gifts range from one gift of $60 million, a transformational gift from the Hormel Foundation that the president highlighted in her opening comments, to more than 25,000 gifts of less than $100. And I can't emphasize that enough, that each and every one of those matters. These numbers illustrate the wide and generous community that is invested in furthering the work here at the University of Minnesota. Fiscal year 22 was also the second year of the University of Minnesota Foundation strategic plan, which is guided by the 4 imperatives that you see on the bottom of the slide. To ensure the foundation's work is always a direct reflection of the university priorities, this plan was built in tandem with President Gable's vision for the university, the MPACT 2025 strategic plan. Along the top of this visual, you'll see the familiar MPACT 2025 commitments. And as you know, each one of those commitments has a robust set of goals and actions underneath them. The foundation's 4 key imperatives center around private investment in the university, engagement of our stakeholders, our commitment to our talented people, and our drive for further operational efficiencies and excellence. We've color-coded this slide so you can see how each of the foundation's imperatives directly supports MPACT 2025. And we are proud and excited that the private investment and engagement imperatives strategically support all 5 of the MPACT 2025 commitments, allowing philanthropy to play a role in so many priorities across the university. The work of the foundation also directly supports another facet of President Gable's vision, the PEAK initiative. You can see here the many services that UMF centrally provides to the university-wide development community and how they are aligned with the PEAK's initiative's guiding principles. We look forward to leveraging the PEAK initiative to further and evaluate ways in which we can support development needs more efficiently and more centrally. As we celebrate a record year of fundraising, what really matters most is the impact made possible by such generous giving. And so today I'd like to highlight that impact by sharing a few stories of innovation and inspiration and how they tie into our current fundraising priorities. So let's talk about innovation and how faculty power the university's drive to discover. The range of expertise they bring, along with their commitment to advance knowledge that impacts future generations, make faculty essential to the university's mission. Take a look at how UMM Drs. Dena Klohosi changed the outlook of one patient through an innovative approach to chemotherapy.
One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He has 9. Yeah. Well, I put this one down.
Well, no, Dad doesn't have this big toe.
I was walking on the golf course and I felt the pain in my foot. It came and went for the better part of 6 months.
Then you had a momentary break where you didn't work out and your foot pain got better. And so I immediately thought, it's stress fractures, stop working out.
It was a bluebird day. I was sitting at TRIA and they said most likely it's Ewing sarcoma. One of the founders of TRIA is a family friend, Dr. Al Markman. I called him from the room by myself and said, what do I do? He said, you're going to go see Dr. Dennis Klohosi at the U of M right now.
As I think was the case with Blake and is often the case with patients, they come with expectations that are more dire. The first thing you want them to know when they leave your office is they've arrived at a place, they've met a team that is going to take care of them.
I convinced myself that it was going to be below the knee. And Dennis was very quick to say, we don't know yet. Where other hospitals said, we're going to cut your leg off.
Blake would not be in the hospital unless he needed to be. He had a fanny pack of chemo that he would wear, and he would be home with us. At the time, we had a 6-month-old baby, a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And at the time, that seemed a little bit scary to me. And in hindsight, it was such a blessing. The kids didn't miss a beat. We had the most amazing home health care. It was a very difficult time, but it could have been so much worse.
I went through 14 rounds of chemo, and I was able to get away with a partial foot amputation.
I have a folder in my office, which is now like about 5 inches thick. The title on it is Good Things, and it's filled with Christmas cards, graduation photographs for children. For me, this is what the focus is. One tremendous victory, like in the case of Blake, helps you not forget, but not overemphasize the failures and our inability to cure everyone with cancer.
What they're doing at the U is incredible. The patient is first, and thank you to all the supporters, because it does save lives. This is an action shot, so we look like we're just living normal life.
This is not like, we're never all together. I like golfing with him and...
I like golfing with him too.
Yeah, we're golfing. I'm gonna caddy for him today. Whenever he wins in something, he always says he's so much better and he has 9 toes.
At UMF, we are striving to further the innovation of faculty like Dr. Klohosi. Through the innovators and educators, a drive for the University of Minnesota faculty. The challenges before us can only be met by giving the brightest minds the opportunity to discover solutions. Philanthropy, and especially strategic flexible research funds, are critical. With discovery, innovation, and impact a top commitment in the university's strategic plans, gifts used by faculty are critical. By directing philanthropy to faculty purposes, donors help the university recruit and retain the best academic minds. A powerful example of the best academic minds at work is seen in the story of Celia Grace. She's an extraordinary 5-year-old from Alabama who became the first person in the United States to receive gene therapy for metachromatic leukodystrophy, known as MLD. This rare childhood disease is caused by a missing enzyme, which results in the loss of the ability to walk, talk, and interact with their environment. An MLD is fatal if left untreated. A groundbreaking gene therapy for this disease exists, but at the time, it had only been offered in Italy. So U of M's Dr. Paul Orchard and his colleagues lobbied the FDA and got clearance to perform the procedure. And last fall, at the Masonic Children's Hospital, Celia Grace received the gene therapy. More than 500 million of her own re-engineered cells were infused back into her body, cells that contain that important missing enzyme. She's now on her way to be considered cured. Dr. Orchard is just one of the many extraordinary faculty members who are saving lives and changing the world through innovation, and it's an honor that we can help raise the funds to advance their work at the University of Minnesota. And of course, faculty and students go hand in hand, and we are also excited to roll out a new initiative that focuses on raising money to remove barriers that prevent students from finding success. I'm always inspired by students, their curiosity, their passion, their drive. They are eager to succeed and make a difference in the world around them. But for many, their opportunities to shine are dimmed by other realities. Learners to Leaders, the drive for the University of Minnesota students, strive to eliminate, or at the very least, reduce those obstacles so students can flourish and go on to become leaders in their communities in Minnesota and beyond. In an economy and a society emerging from a global pandemic, I think we can all agree the need to support the success of the next generation has never been more pressing. Learners to Leaders is a grassroots effort to rally around our future leaders today by caring for the student as a whole. Working hand in hand with MPAC 2025, Learners to Leaders focuses on the university's top priorities for students, removing financial barriers, fostering equity and inclusivity, and supporting the whole student. Scholarships and fellowships are most important in this effort and can change the entire trajectory of a student's college experience and ensuing career. Scholarships and fellowships helps to remove anxiety about student loans and allows students to follow their passions. And as we know, it's proven that scholarship recipients most often have a higher four-year graduation rate, which translates to less debt. And just as important, scholarship and fellowship recipients tell us time and time again how much it helped just to know that someone believed in them. And Scott Polanski is a wonderful example of a student who was deeply impacted by the scholarship support he received as a student. Scott graduated with a degree in actuarial science in 2009, and he received the Benson Scholarship each of the 4 years here at the University of Minnesota. Years later, with his career in full swing, he wanted to give back. And the pandemic and the murder of George Floyd got him thinking about how he could do it in a way that helped both students and society. So last fall, Scott decided the time was right to create an endowed scholarship for graduate students in the School of Social Work in the College of Education and Human Development. He said, "I have a couple of friends who graduated from the School of Social Work, and I knew the school was preparing their students to deal with these issues, and I didn't want to stand on the sidelines any longer." And this is exactly what we hope for, that students will develop from learners to leaders, finding ways to give back and improve the world around them. We are so grateful for the many people like Scott who have given generously through scholarships, but we also know that supporting our students go beyond just financial resources. That's why we have programs like the Nutritious You Food Pantry, who provide fresh and healthy food to students who struggle to get enough to eat. And as part of the President's Initiative for Student Mental Health, there are resources in place for each and every student who needs it on all 5 of our campuses. These and many more programs system-wide are supporting the well-being and the academic success of university students, and Learners to Leaders will broaden these efforts in important ways. We are excited for the many ways innovators and educators and Learners to Leaders will impact the community and beyond. The difference they have already made is tangible. The stories of Amira, Blake, Celia Grace, and Scott all illustrate that. So I'd like to close by hearing from one more voice of the UMM community, University of Minnesota Crookston student Mara McDougall.
I got something big. I'm done with the award ceremony, and guess what? I have gotten the Student of the Year award. I've always been a U of M girl. I'm from the Twin Cities. UMC was actually the first school that reached out to me to say, we want you to come here. So when I applied, everything went smoothly.
Is hardworking in many different groups across campus and is always more than willing to lend a helping hand to others.
I'm hearing voices and stories all day long, all throughout the nights, 24 hours a day. So making sure the community on campus feels safe and welcome for everybody means a lot to me. Me and 4 other students started back up. We did movie nights, we did, bingo, karaoke. We did a lot in a short period of time of starting this club in the spring semester. When the June Dairy Month, it was my job to go on social media, grab a lot of screenshots of the interactions on social media from the customers, make a deck, and then I'm also doing the end of the summer project as well. I'll be taking 12 credits, so 3 classes. And then I also will be taking an internship, so I also will be getting a working experience internationally as well. So I'll be studying and interning. I'm out of breath and I'm so happy. But let me get in my car and we're gonna talk more about it when I get home. Love you guys.
I can't think of a better way to end. It is such a privilege to be able to bring support to students like Mara, and I know we can't wait to hear what her future holds. Thank you for the support and leadership of the Board of Regents and all that you have provided our fundraising teams over this last year. On behalf of the entire University of Minnesota development community, thank you for your service to this great institution. We are also grateful for the University of Minnesota Foundation's Board of Trustees, our advancement partners at the University of Minnesota Alumni Association and University Relations, as well as each and every chancellor, dean, and unit leader throughout the 5 campuses. And a special thank you to you, President Gabel, for your leadership, your advocacy, your passion, your commitment. This work takes many hands, and we look forward to our continued partnership in supporting greatness at the University of Minnesota. Thank you.
And Kathy, thank you for your presentation. Colleagues, let's turn to discussion. Questions? Regent Hipsch.
Well, I just want to thank Kathy and her staff for a great job. I mean, $453 million, that's incredible. In a non-campaign year, I don't know, where do we go from here? Can we sustain that? I mean, hopefully we can, but it's such an important part of funding the university, and so thank you for all you do.
Yeah, thank you, Regent Hipsch. I would just be mindful that we celebrate the $453 million. Certainly a large part of that was the $60 million transformative gift from the Hormel Foundation. But I'd be also remiss to tell you, you back out that $60 million, it was still a record year for the university. So the quality underneath that $60 million isn't hidden, it's still there, and we will continue to grow it.
Thank you. Regent Hipsch, follow-up?
No follow-up.
Further questions or comments from members of the committee? Regent Johnson.
Thank you, and thank you, Kathy, and we've worked together. And actually, I just want to comment on what your staff does, which I was the beneficiary of, and my students and programs at the University of Minnesota Duluth. They knew the programs, and they knew the people, and they knew the needs of UMD. So I would get a call from Lynn Shane, or Bob Burgett, or Mindy Breva, and say, I think we've got a potential funding source for your program or your students. So I'm very grateful for you and your staff and all that you're doing to help all the branches. So thank you.
Thank you. President Schmittlikoffer, response?
The development community is 425 strong here at the University of Minnesota, and every day they show up just to continue to advance the mission of this great institution. They are mission-driven people, and they are honored to do it. So glad to hear that staff across all 5 campuses are just lifting up each and individual campus's mission.
Thank you. Regent Davenport.
Thank you, Acting Chair Rocha. I just want to echo the reminder to all of us what a great staff and what a great foundation, and also all the participants on the trusteeship for the foundation are just fabulous and hardworking and generous. So I thank all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And turn it over to Chair Swigum. Yeah, we just finished the conversation.
Well, we just finished the discussion? Yes. No other questions? No other questions? Awesome. I look at you, Kathy, and I see success, I see smiles, I see $4.6 billion. But you do create, as I said earlier, you create an expectation that you have to live up to.
There is plenty of opportunity for more, and it takes all of us in this room to make it happen. So I stand here really representing so many people, so thank you.
And to your, to the donors, what would you say, 25,000 donors last year?
Oh, no, over 90,000 individual donors, and they gave over 163,000 gifts, which is just tremendous.
Awesome. Awesome. I prolonged this and now. Okay, Regent Kenyatta.
Now that we've put an end to this coup we had over here.
You gonna give me a hard one?
No, not at all. I mean, I'm just wondering what we can do, either as regents or the university, to support that, to uplift that. I mean, what's our role, in this whole process? How can we support this?
Okay, Regent Kenyatta, I'll say that,
Well,
we have the.
besides the obvious way.
We have the opportunity to open up our own checkbook.
Yeah.
But also, we can join Kathy and her team. I see Bob is back there, or he was there. We can join Kathy and her team on outreach efforts to potential donors, which I've done a few times. Not as successful as it should have been, but Kathy, you answer the question. You'd be better than I.
Well, Vice Chair Svigum and Regent Kenyanya, it's a great question. Thank you for that. I think there's many things that as a Board of Regents you can do at the very highest level. It is about governing this great institution and making sure that the brand reputation and the mission of this university continue to get accomplished. Having that kind of brand reputation in the state, across the country and across the globe really gets donors engaged and wanting to be involved in the great work we're doing here. On the lower level, as Vice Chair Svigum mentioned, we're always happy to, if you want to open some doors for us, we're always happy to kind of step in and get engaged with anybody that you have. And as I look around the horseshoe, I think many of you, if not all of you, have done that for us. So I just say thank you. And many of you continue to support the events. So when you come to events that donors are at, for them to be able to see that university leadership cares and is involved, is engaged, it goes a long way. So I just say thank you. If you can continue to give me the time and our development community the time and the service that you do every day, we're going to be in great shape.
So we all can be on Kathy's team.
Please, please. We consider you already part of the team.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Next, we'll move to the UMTC public safety update. This is number 9 on our agenda. Senior Vice President Franz, Vice President Kramer, and I think Chief of Police, yep, there he is. I saw him here out in the hallway earlier, Matt Clark. Thank you for the three of you for joining us, and maybe at this time I'd turn to President Gable to kind of tee up the presentation a little bit.
Thank you, Vice Chair Svigum and members of the board. So, as you know, ensuring the health and safety of every member of our university community is our top priority. And since we last updated you in July, we've continued to invest significant resources and been very grateful for a lot of input from different community members into these critical efforts. Notably, in recent weeks, we established a strategic safety advisory committee, and this committee includes key university stakeholders, faculty, staff, students, parents, alums, community members, all with shared goals at driving action and progress. It's a challenging thing to create shared governance and input around this process because, as we know, We're dealing with something that is not technically a part of campus, but very much affects our campus community. And the best way for us to do this is to pull this diverse group together so that we can work together on outcomes. One of the most notable outcomes from the group was the launch of the Dinkytown Safety and Pedestrian Access Pilot Program. This restricted vehicular access using concrete pylons to enhance safety, but also retain pedestrian access in Dinkytown on the weekends. That was a very effective step, but we heard some reaction from the Dinkytown business owners because this affected their access to customers. And so with the partnership with the City of Minneapolis and Minneapolis Police Department, and specific thanks to Inspector McGinty from the 2nd Precinct, the concrete pylons have been replaced with metal plates that have the similar effect of disrupting traffic, but are less disruptive to customers and businesses. And so those will be in place, if I'm not mistaken, and the gentleman presenting will correct me if I'm wrong, until we have to start plowing for snow, because you can't plow for snow while the plates are down, but the need to plow for snow has its own limiting effect on disruptive traffic issues, which we will look forward to. Silver lining. So there are other steps we've taken. In recent weeks, we have increased patrols with thanks from MPD and the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office in our off-campus Minneapolis neighborhoods, particularly on weekend evenings. And as Chief Clark will describe, we have dedicated our own officers to supporting those patrols so that we are highly visible throughout our adjacent neighborhoods at the highest risk times. And just a few days ago, Governor Walz visited the Twin Cities campus with the offer of 2 Minnesota State patrols to augment this effort. This is especially notable because a lot of the challenges we've been having are car related. And so having the state patrol there has been will be very helpful. We've also been doing intensive hiring for community service members to the police department and for sworn officer positions. We've added multiple cameras. We've enhanced the Gopher Chauffeur fleet of vehicles, which allows for more rides for community members who are in the adjacent neighborhoods, and a variety of other updates that I don't want to get ahead of our presenters who will share with you. Last month, we had our 2nd public safety forum in as many months. We were grateful in the first one to be joined by Mayor Fry and interim chief from MPD. This time we were joined by Inspector McGinty and is it Vice Chief for Patrols from MPD, Chief Clark? Vice Commissioner for Patrols. And then we were also joined by new Public Safety Community Safety Commissioner Cedric Alexander, who of course the university knows well and who knows the university well because he stewarded our comprehensive review of the potential for continuous improvement that we did back in the fall of 2020. At the forum, because of some notable steps taken by the City of Minneapolis, we were able to announce a first step of a phased approach to new partnerships with the Minneapolis Police Department, with MPD using off-duty police officers at Gopher football games and using MPD for specialty services, which is things like explosive detection canines and bomb squads. This decision was the product of a lot of conversations with the city and in particular with Commissioner Alexander, and we'll continue to evaluate this phased approach throughout the fall. These steps and those that we will take are centered on the prioritization of our students and staff and faculty safety, both on campus and in the neighborhood surrounding our neighborhood, and in our ongoing commitment to recognize that safety means different things to different people, and that these 2 efforts can coexist functionally and effectively to reduce crime while creating a more inclusive and just campus community. And that's exactly where our community is heading. So joining me today are our leaders of this work, to whom we are very grateful. Of course, Senior Vice President Myron Franz, Vice President Matt Kramer, who's been chairing the Strategic Safety Advisory Committee, and of course, we all know UMPD Chief Matt Clark. So they'll go into detail, and with my appreciation, Mr. Vice Chair, I will turn it over to them.
Okay, and thank you, President Gable, for your attention to public safety on campus for our staff and students. Very, very much appreciated. To the 3 of you, I don't know who wants to go first. Mr. Franz.
Thank you, Vice Chair Swigum, and thank you, Madam President and members of the board. The The first mention of snow plowing already has me in some trepidation. But the fact that it's for public safety makes it okay, I think. But the safety, to be serious, the safety of our students, staff, faculty, and visitors remain a top priority for us at the University of Minnesota, as President Gable mentioned. We've made significant progress and some significant investments, but we're going to continue that work. I want to expand on a couple of areas that the President mentioned. First of all, we're taking a very aggressive approach in hiring for our new positions for the University of Minnesota Police Department, both for police officer positions and for community service officer positions. We have recently hired several new officers, and we're working toward reaching our new goal now of 71, but we know we have a lot of work to get there. We also have current applications open now for the community service officer positions, and we're working hard through that process to hire them as quickly as we can. I want to give a shout out to Vice President Ken Horstman and his team for helping with us in the human resource part of this process to make things work as quickly as possible. While we work to fully staff up, we have enlisted the help of our partners. As President Gable mentioned, Governor Dayton and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan were here on campus to help announce part of their partnership with us. But now we're partnering with the Minneapolis Police Department, the Metro Transit Police, Minnesota State Patrol, and the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office for increased law enforcement visibility in our neighborhoods surrounding our campus. The other thing I want to refer to is you'll continue to see our safety guides every Thursday through Saturday from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. around the Dinkytown neighborhood, help people wayfinding walks to their car or to their nearby apartment or business. They provide a much needed service, and we're in the process of looking at extending that contract into the future. I also want to mention a little bit about our safety plans. We talk a lot about this activity, and Vice President Kramer will talk some about our safety campaign and other issues, but we're under the 2025 plan that requires us to develop a plan to assess and improve safety. So those plans are in progress right now through all 5 campuses. We're in the process now of getting ready to begin the consulting process for the Twin Cities campus plan. And I know the other campuses are likewise working on those. But this plan is guided by the 5 system-wide safety goals, which serve as a roadmap to help coordinate and more effectively promote safety and security across all campuses so that we improve communications and outreach and make sure we reinforce planning and resource readiness. They're at various stages, as I mentioned, but in December, we plan to present to the board the status of the safety plans for your review. I also want to note yesterday, at part of our biennial budget request, in addition to the request for the core mission of $45 million a year increase from the legislature, which includes our current commitment to public safety, and that will continue. But we also noted a special request for $5 million per year recurring for additional investments in the safety infrastructure around the security and safety of all 5 campuses. So we know that's an important part of what we want to talk about with the legislature this year, and the Governor Walz gave a shout out for support of that request for this current year and also going forward. I want to give you an update on 2 other safety topics. 1721 University Avenue, I want to report that there have been no additional criminal activities at that property over the past several months. As you may know, the house is currently closed and unoccupied. Based on recent history, the university continues to have public safety concerns about the co-op renewing its lodging license. The city of Minneapolis is responsible for licensing this property. The city inspected the property in June and determined that there were various safety code violations. The city reports that it will not renew the co-op's rental license until the code violations are remedied. Now, the current mortgage is mortgages is held by the University of Minnesota Foundation Real Estate Advisors, FRIA, and that includes provisions and standards pertaining to the condition of the property. Our review has determined that the current condition of the property constitutes a default under the mortgage, and we have communicated this to the co-op. We will continue to work with the co-op in their attempts to reopen to make sure that the community and the university safety concerns are addressed so that business decision is made in the broadest possible sense regarding the people who live in that area and the university as a neighbor. The second thing I want to talk a little bit about is the gas leak, the petroleum gas leak that we've had experienced over the last several months. I've shared with most of you various communications from the Metropolitan Council about their leading the investigation of these sources of flammable materials found in the Minnesota sewers that resulted in June 30 and August 2nd evacuations of residents and businesses around and near that part of the Twin Cities campus. The Met Council, in partnership with the City of Minneapolis, Hennepin County, and the university, they continue to inspect potential sources, and they've expanded the monitoring of the sanitary sewers in real time for elevated gas or vapor levels present in the sewer systems. The additional monitoring will alert us and Met Council if high levels of flammable substances are detected and will allow us to take swift action and reduce the likelihood of any future evacuations. The Met Council reported to us just yesterday that there have been no noticeable spikes in flammable materials since the last incident on August the 2nd. They've noted an additional company that they've located that has a discharge incident that they're working and monitoring, but it shows the heightened sense of monitoring that's going on in this system. And we expect the Met Council will continue to monitor the entire system as we go forward. One of the problems is we are sort of downstream, if you will, in this system from some industrial areas, and we have to make sure that we monitor these situations going forward because of the potential for spills or other kinds of discharges into the sewer system. The good news, though, is that monitoring is working, and these issues are getting very prompt responses from the state and from our partners in Minneapolis and Hennepin County. We're going to continue to coordinate closely with Met Council and state and regional officials to support investigation and monitoring. We, on our own, have implanted some new additional monitoring around university facilities in areas along University Avenue, especially for event and response to activities when there are a lot of people, like last Thursday's football game. We want to make sure that we have extra opportunities to monitor that situation. So we're going to install some additional real-time monitors in the system and monitor those going forward. But we're going to continue to think about other ways to support providing precautions and preparedness, and ultimately even deal with the physical nature of the fact that we seem to be in a low point of this system and subject to these accumulations when there are discharges. But we're monitoring that and on top of that. I'd like to now turn it over to Chief Clark to give you an update on the newest safety pilot program we have about off-campus safety alerts. Chief Clark, if that's okay.
Sure is. Chief Clark.
Good morning, Chair Swigum, members of the board. Just to expand on the Dinkytown notification program that started today. That program is a program that we're working with Minneapolis and Minneapolis PD on. We'll be texting events that meet what is our standard for Clery alerts on campus in the area of Dinkytown. A lot of people ask what that area actually is, and that is the area that's east of 35W and south of what is 8th Street and the train tracks, and northwest of our East Bank campus. The info that we get is from usually Minneapolis 911, and a lot of times we're trying to monitor that based on off-campus events in all the neighborhoods. So sometimes it is inconsistent on the amount of information we get from Minneapolis 911. We want to be clear that we'll put out as much info as we get it in, as quickly as possible. I think our track record on campus is fairly good and has been for a number of years, but it's pretty inconsistent off campus based on the difference in communication networking. There are a couple things that we do want to remind the public about, and that is that the notifications won't be going out if they're old. So if there's something past 60 minutes where there's no longer a perceived threat in the Dinkytown area, we probably will not put out a text message. Additionally, a lot of people are confused sometimes when we catch the suspect. We caught a robbery suspect last week in one of our parking ramps. We won't put out a text because the suspect's in custody and no longer a threat to campus. So you might see something on social media where unfortunately a victim or student says that they were robbed, but ultimately, if the suspect's arrested, then we will not put out a text. Additionally, there are times where the information is inaccurate. A victim might call in Dinkytown, but the incident happened outside Dinkytown. So we will work with MPD to confirm the location and information before sending out a text, much like what we do on campus. So there are times where that inconsistency, just based on location and circumstances, especially in the middle of the night, aren't always the same, and we try to verify all of that information before we send something out. This is a pilot project, and we're going to go through December 31st, and then we'll reassess. We'll gather information on the number of crime incidents in the Dinkytown area, the number of alerts we put out, and we'll also publish that information so everybody can see how the pilot project went. One other item that President Gable mentioned was that we are doing joint patrols. We have done them in the past, but not to this extent, and just want to thank our partners who have stepped forward to help us out. As you know, the governor was on campus this week talking about the State Patrol. I spoke to Colonel Langer from the State Patrol last week. He's happy to help and assist us not only this week with their patrols, but helping us on campus if we have any incidents or even in the surrounding neighborhoods. I've seen transit police and their community service officers on the light rail stations, and they're helping a lot of our campus community navigate using the light rail system, and they'll continue to do that through the month. MPD and Hennepin County Sheriff's Office has also added patrols for us, and we are very appreciative of that. I'm thankful also that the Senior Vice President and Vice President have played a part in kind of making sure that some of our local partners were informed and assisted in getting some of these contracts and other things done. So feeling very good about having that much visibility on and off campus. And I have heard from campus community members that it is pretty recognizable that there's additional amount of uniformed personnel out on the streets. Thank you.
Thank you. VP Kramer?
Mr. Vice Chair, Madam President, members, thank you. I'm going to briefly update you on two things. One of the items mentioned in the action update is a public safety campaign. I'm holding up, I've got a variety of posters here. You'll see these posted all over campus, on the Twin Cities campus. This is also a digital campaign, so you'll see this on kiosks, the digital kiosks that many of our colleges have. But then it also is very much a social media campaign, because that's where we know we reach students. So both ourselves in university relations, as well as all of our contemporaries across the communication and marketing channels in the Twin Cities, will be amplifying these via social media. Importantly, it's not just subscribing to social media, it's accessing the tools that we have. And President Gable mentioned, whether it's Go for Chauffeur or 624 Walk, a service where any member of our university community, student, staff, or faculty, can call and receive a walk back to their apartment or car within our service area, and that does include Marcy Homes and Dinkytown. Mr. Steves handed out two handouts. I'll just draw your attention briefly. One of them is simply an update with Chief Clark's community engagement team that did an enormous amount of work over Welcome Week, reaching new students and educating them again on all of the assets that we have and the importance of their own behavior. I think we all recognize that many times people are distracted, whether it's their phone or friends or whatever the case. And in an urban environment, we all just need to be cognizant of that and pay attention. On the second page, under the public awareness or public safety update, President Gable handed this out at our last public safety forum. I have several updates. First of all, obviously the safety campaign has launched. We submitted a budget request to the city of Minneapolis to add 170 additional lights in the Marcy Homes Dinkytown area. We did this using a lighting consultant and working with the city of Minneapolis Public Works to make sure that we are supporting their mechanism to deliver additional lighting. It is subject to the mayor's budget, as we're all familiar, whether it's the governor or a mayor. The mayor proposes, the city council will dispose. And so now the city of Minneapolis is engaged in their budget debate through the end of this calendar year before they make a decision on this. Finally, one last quick update. At the state level, as SVP noted, our most recent request is for $5 million in more safety infrastructure. And both the SVP and Chief Clark have noted this is an investment in not just additional uniformed personnel, whether it's community service officers or otherwise. It's also the extensive camera and notification infrastructure that we have across the Twin Cities campus. And those base level infrastructure investments pay dividend for years to come. Mr. Vice Chair, thank you.
Well, thank you to the three of you for your update and for all the work that's being done to keep our community safe here at the university. Regents, let's turn to discussion now. Regent Farnsworth.
Thank you, Vice Chair Swigum, and I want to start with a comprehensive and sincere thanks to our great leaders here at the presenters table, to our president, and to everyone else who's been working really hard on a whole wide range of comprehensive doesn't even feel strong enough, safety efforts and initiatives that we're undergoing. So my sincere thanks for that. Two questions. One is, and I'll just ask them and we can figure out where to direct them. One is a question, a little bit of a follow-up, I guess, for Chief Clark on the capacity for more sworn officers. And I just want to make sure I'm understanding where we're at with that, because we got an email yesterday about it from a parent leader about adding three more sworn officers. And I just want to make sure I'm understanding, what our budgeted amount is now, how that's impacted by hiring pipelines and timelines, and understanding, you don't just hire somebody today and we have more officers tomorrow, and it's more nuanced than that. But wanting to kind of understand where we're at, how that impacts our budgeted amount, as opposed to the sworn strength that we have. And please forgive me if I'm misusing some technical terms here, but would love some more clarity on that, and then I'll quickly ask my second question.
Chief Clark or VP Franz, I think either one of you could handle it.
Yeah, no problem.
Chief Clark.
Regent Farnsworth and Chair Swigum, right now we have 50 active officers working at UMPD. We're authorized to have 65. It'll probably take most of this year, the school year, plus maybe more, to get to about 60 or more. When you look at the amount of time they have to spend in training and getting their certifications, et cetera. One good note is we're part of the Pathways to Policing program. That's where we hire folks that are not traditional officer or graduates in law enforcement, but also we've really focused on diversity in hiring. The university is one of 12 agencies, and we had the most people put in to come to the university as an officer. So we have 4 people right now in that Pathways program. Fortunately, that takes 6 months for them to go through their training, another 5 to go through field training. So it's 11 months before they even are able to go out on the street by themselves. So we do have a lot of things in place, along with some additional offers that are out there, and some candidates are going through backgrounds programs. The idea that we can add past 65 within this year, I'd say it's doubtful. My goal has always been, in talking with the senior vice president and others, is if we can get to 5 officers on at any given time, that means we can spend more time off campus, if that's the goal. And 5 officers is about 71 officers for the department. Anything past that, we'd have to really look at the answers I gave last time that I spoke to you, and that is, what is our responsibility off campus? How much are we going to spend off campus aside from what we're doing currently? How much are we going to assume of that responsibility in taking 911 calls? It's unfortunate that Minneapolis doesn't have the personnel that they should have right now. We used to have a dedicated beat officer from MPD, Officer Enriquez. He did a great job, but they just don't have the people to do that. I don't know that we can get to the point where we are answering all of our responsibilities and calls on campus and also go off campus. I'm not going to say we can't, but at this point, it's going to be a long time before we get to our right levels on our staffing numbers.
Yeah. Chief Clark, it really does push some of our personnel. I know when you look at the overtime, your wonderful officer you had here yesterday, I had a chance to speak with him, and when he got done with his shift, or when he was going to be done with his shift yesterday, he was going to do 6 hours of overtime. I think Dinkytown area, I think off campus was where we ended up, where he was going to be, but that's significant, when you're talking 9 plus, you're talking 15 hours, it pushes the personnel. But second question, Regent Farnsworth.
Thank you, and thank you for that explanation. I think it's important. That helped me a little bit, but also just understanding all the different factors for everybody around how we get to the current amount of officers we have, and it's really complex. So thank you for that answer. My second question is about the Good Neighbor Fund. And someone, a few people had sent this to me, but I was also curious, being familiar with it as a past board member of the Marcy Homes neighborhood and understanding how the Good Neighbor Fund, which is an endowment that we have, was created in relation to the stadium. I guess wondering, since its founding in 2007, I believe there's been $700 million that's been granted for various projects, and was wondering how much money has went from the Good Neighbor Fund to projects involving safety infrastructure. If the Good Neighbor Fund, whatever the next round is of grants that we're currently in, is involved in funding and helping support some of our safety initiatives, understanding the structure and the governance of that is a little bit different. And I was also thinking about it, given our conversation yesterday about the $5 million that would hopefully that we get that will supplement some of those more longer term infrastructure related things in the scope of everything else that we're doing. So just wondering if anyone could shed a little light onto what's happening with the Good Neighbor Fund in relation to safety.
Mr. Kramer, maybe for this one.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, Regent Farnsworth. And first of all, before I answer, I wanted to clarify, my hearing isn't that great. Did I hear you say 700 or 7 million? Because I know it's not 700 million.
Yeah, perhaps that's wrong, since 2007, but please correct me on anything that I said.
Without knowing the number exactly, I'm confident we didn't have 700 million to give away in the Good Neighbor Fund. That being said, sir, I will have to go back and look at those awards, and I will categorize them and then provide it to the board in terms of what categories, whether it's safety or otherwise. I will share with you that at the direction of President Gable, we have been working with the University District Alliance, who is the beneficiary of many of those Good Neighbor Funds, to build out a new set of bylaws for the UDA such that they can elect an executive director, go after money on their own, because today they are essentially funded 100% through the University of Minnesota. And it's a loosely organized entity that deals with everything from safety to beautification, streetscape, et cetera. A more focused UDA with their own executive director, able to go after state, federal, and local grants, whether it's the cities or the St. Paul Foundation, Minneapolis Foundation, et cetera, would be much more effective. And I suspect that in the course of doing that, Regents Farnsworth, we may very well restructure the Good Neighbor Fund, whether as an initial funding source or some other category for the UDA.
That's great, thank you.
Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we're winding down here. Just a couple comments and a request. This is a great report, and I think it really kind of reflects the necessity being the mother of invention. We've addressed a concern that hasn't been in this realm for at least recent memory, and it's the attention that the administration, President Gable, the whole team has put toward this is, I think, very important and very good, and I like where we're heading. I'd like to see that trajectory continue on and start to try to anticipate what we may have in the future. I mean, and hopefully we won't have to deal with increases in the type of activity that we've encountered this last summer. I, on a personal note, had an opportunity to do a ride-along with one of our officers, and I certainly recommend that to anybody who hasn't had a chance to do that. It's a remarkable experience to really understand what goes on with our police force and the team. A request is to Senior Vice President Franz. And we may have had this, and it just escapes me now, but if we could just get even a quick touch point from each of our campuses as to whether they have any security issues or safety issues. It'd be great if they're all in terrific shape, there are no issues, but nonetheless, it'd be nice to make sure that we're treating all of our students and all of our campuses with that same kind of attention so that it doesn't catch us by surprise. Last thing I'll say is we had an interesting conversation with one of the student representatives yesterday, for those that were part of the dialogue, trying to figure out, and Chief Clark, you mentioned a bit ago about the shortage in the Minneapolis force right now has really created an issue for us because we have a unique campus. We grew up as a commuter campus. We now have a much stronger residential campus, but we're still, as I've pointed out numerous times, the lowest in the Big Ten for dormitory rooms per student on campus. And so we still have a lot of students in the community, and these neighborhoods around here have got varying percentages of U of M students per population. And what she had identified was that there's a negative correlation between income or access to resources and proximity to campus, meaning that students with fewer resources end up living farther from campus and have less access to the security that's provided by our police force, and likely have an even greater need for travel for employment and other things as well to try to make their way through. So I don't, what I would like to see us as a board, I think we should have a conversation as our expectations, because we've talked about it in kind of general terms about where we're, you talked about going off campus. I'm, as a member of this board, I'm not clear on what our standard is as far as how far off campus do we consider to be an area that we would properly provide police coverage. But nonetheless, I tend to err on the side of more, just because these are students that we invite to our institution to pursue their education. And so if we could at some time, Mr. Chair, have a conversation about what makes sense, and it's going to go into the conversation that just occurred between Regent Farnsworth and Chief Clark about what are our resources, because if we don't have the people, we can't cover it anyway, even if we wanted to make it a policy. So in a longer term way, decide, is it 60% students in an area that we would consider something that we would want to provide some safety and security? Is it 40%? Is it 80%? I don't know the answer to that right now. It seems that we've talked a lot about, well, that's on the other side of University Avenue, even though it's 100% students or nearly 100%. I like the fact that we've opened it up a little bit more to provide some security, but that would be an important conversation, Mr. Chair, especially when we talk about budgets and the size of the force and so on. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Chief Clark, I've heard you speak to this. As we expand our boundaries beyond the university, we increase our liability, we increase consequences, we increase a lot of potential problems too. Would you want to respond just in a little bit to Regent Rocha?
Yeah, Regent Rocha, Mr. Chair. A couple issues there. So the first one is that we've seen campus crime fairly much either go down a little bit, I would say, and I hate to even say that right now because we're trying to get to the beginning of the school year, and it looks like, thank you, it looks like we're going to be a bit lower than we were the last 2 years, but we just want to see those numbers. Off campus, I would even say it's somewhat leveled off. It was pretty busy the beginning of the summer. It seems like things are better. But again, I want to get through September and maybe even October before we start pulling summer numbers to just find out what our status is. Ultimately, for me, I don't think in the number of students, and I don't think in the percentages like you might in neighborhoods. I understand why you would think that way. I think more in the lines of how many priority or emergency calls for life safety issues are we going to get, and how far is that going to pull us off campus where we aren't able to keep those crime levels down by being visible on campus and responding quickly to on-campus calls. A lot of what we do is by the second. I've talked about it in the past where there's a GPS black puck on every squad car and you know where every person is, and we measure how long it takes to get to those calls. The more we take off campus, so let's say we start taking not just life safety calls but report calls, or we start patrolling certain business areas solely based on a commitment we've made. My only concern is then we're taking personnel off campus. And I've said it to many parents and students and others that if you call 911 on campus, there's really no way we can say we can't be there unless we're completely tied up with an emergency on campus. So this issue was brought up even recently with a student that had an incident just off campus, and the question was, why didn't we take the report? It was because we've committed to taking the highest level emergencies off campus where somebody's life's in danger, they need help, there's a car crash, there's an aggravated assault, whatever it might be. We're committed to that. But Minneapolis has to do their share while we continue to cover our main priority, and that's campus.
Further discussion? Further questions of any regents? Go in the right direction. Going in the right direction. Okay, I thank you for your presentation, very, very much. We'll move on to reports of committees. Our committee business will be led off here with a report from the Audit and Compliance Committee, Regent Kenyana.
Thank you,
Would
Mr.
share your
Chair.
report with us, please.
Yes, the Audit and Compliance Committee did not consider any action items this month. In addition to reviewing the committee work plan, we did hear from Athletics Compliance Director Jeremiah Carter, who joined the committee for a robust overview of Twin Cities campus athletics compliance. In his overview, Director Carter described the structure and reporting line of the Athletics Compliance Office in addition to their core responsibilities. This was a nice high-level overview after our July retreat conversation with Director Carter, where we discussed emerging national trends in collegiate athletics. Thank you, Vice Chair Swigum. This concludes my report.
And thank you, Chair Kenyana. Regent Hipsch, will you please share a report on behalf of the Litigation Committee?
Chair Swigum, the Litigation Review Committee met yesterday. At this meeting, we adopted a resolution that authorized the closing of the meeting to discuss matters subject to the attorney-client privilege.
Okay. And then you closed your doors. Thank you, Regent Hipsch, thank you. For the Mission Fulfillment Committee, Regent Davenport, your report, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair Swigum. The Mission Fulfillment Committee had one action item this month. The committee voted unanimously to recommend approval of the revised consent reports, which includes academic program changes, conferral of tenure, and conferral of continuous appointment. I move approval of the revised consent report.
Approval has been made. Is there any discussion to the consent report? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries. Regent Davenport, thank you for your report. Are there any additional comments you need to make from the committee?
That concludes my report. Thank you, Vice Chair Swigum.
Thank you, Mary. Let's go on to the Finance and Ops. Regent Hipsch again?
MVP of the week, I something. The report of the Finance and Operations Committee includes 4 items this month. The committee voted unanimously with 1 abstention to recommend approval of the consent report, which includes 9 purchase of goods and services, 1 million and over, 1 capital budget amendment, and 1 employment agreement. I would move the approval of the consent report.
And we will do a roll call on the consent report. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Regent Rocha.
Thank you. And because it came up again today, I just want to make clear that my approach to the topic, and this isn't with respect to the scoreboard, I fully support the concept and the idea, the reason, the risk and all that. I just would seek with that level of exposure, I would like to see more development of the potential of the revenue sources to cover that going forward and not have that exposure. That's the basis of my abstention. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion on the specific item or others in the consent report? If not, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. Mr. Steves?
On the Finance and Operations Committee consent report, Regent Davenport.
Yes.
Regent Davenport votes yes. Regent Farnsworth.
Yes.
Regent Farnsworth votes yes. Regent Hipsch.
Yes.
Regent Hipsch votes yes. Regent Ruth Johnson. She has stepped out. Regent Tad Johnson.
Yes.
Regent Tad Johnson votes yes. Regent Kenyanya.
Yes.
Regent Kenyanya votes yes. Regent Mayron is absent. Regent Rocha.
I abstain.
Regent Rocha abstains. Regent Tauyirabe.
Yes.
Regent Tauyirabe votes yes. Regent Verhalen.
Yes.
Regent Verhalen votes yes. Chair Swigum.
Yes.
Chair Swigum votes yes.
Mr. Steves, before I announce the result, would we want to wait a second for Ruth to come back, or?
Yeah, I
assume she just stepped in the back.
Mr. Chair, I would.
She could.
Mr. Chair, I would move to table the motion momentarily and go to the rest of the reports. Is there one more?
Okay.
And then take it off the table when she returns, if that works.
That would work for me. If you have more from your committee, Regent Hipsch?
I do.
Okay, is that okay with other members here? just to give Regent Johnson, sorry, a chance to vote. Okay, Regent Hips, the rest of your report, and then we will go back to the vote on your motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Swigum. The other three items were recommended for approval by the board by way of unanimous vote without any abstention. Those include the following: approval of the resolution related to strategic property planning, approval of the purchase of 512 Ontario Street, Southeast Minneapolis, Twin Cities campus, and approval of the purchase of 639 Erie Street, Southeast Minneapolis, Twin Cities campus. I move approval of those items.
I don't think we have to, do we have to approve?
Yes.
Okay.
We would have to vote to approve.
We don't have to vote.
We
do.
We have to vote, but
Yes.
there's no second needed.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion to those three items the Regent Hips talked about? If not, we'll proceed to vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion does prevail. Okay, we will now revert, what, you got more to
I
say?
want more, yeah.
Okay.
Vice Chair Swigum, the committee also adopted a resolution to conduct a non-public meeting of the Finance and Operations Committee to develop or consider offers for the purchase or sale of real property. Thank you, Vice Chair Swigum. This concludes my report.
Regent Hips, thank you for your information. Let's revert back to the vote. You can announce the vote if you would like, Mr. Steves.
Mr. Chair, it appears that Regent Ruth Johnson has stepped away. So with that, I have recorded 8 yes votes, 0 no votes, 1 abstention, and 3 absences.
There being 8 votes in favor, the consent report is adopted. Old business.
Yep. Government, I don't know. Governance.
Did I miss one?
Not the most important meeting. That's why we don't get any love over there.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, I see. Page 9 comes after page 8.
Usually.
Regent Verhalen for the Committee on Governance and Policy.
Thank you. Like Regent Kenyanya, the Governance and Policy Committee did not consider any action items this month. Thank you, Vice Chair Swigum. That concludes my report, and I won't take it personally.
I beg you, I'm sorry. The page just disappeared.
I understand.
Okay, Regent Verhalen, thank you for your short report. There being any further discussion on any of items before us? If not, notice the clock, members. We made the 3 hours. So somebody let Chair Powell know.
I have new business.
Okay, is there any other new business? Any other new business? If not, I'll declare this meeting of the Board of Regents adjourned.
Can we filibuster? Is that?
I hope not.